In 2026, I am embarking on a kind of musical mission, which is both an experiment, but also a protest against the music industry. The experiment is to find out, is it possible to successfully release an album like they used to, exclusively on vinyl record? And the protest is kind of against the music industry, how it has become these days. I'm going to tell you about the album and the project, but before I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you how it's led up to this point for me personally, because I believe the reason I'm doing this is kind of as interesting or as important as the music in this case. So there's a bit of a fairy tale that a lot of people believe, a lot of musicians, including myself, believed when they got into music, and I think it's this mythology that a lot of people still believe is true about the music industry, and it goes a little bit like this. You write some good songs, you play them live, people love it, you record them, you release them, loads of people listen, you probably then get signed to a record label, you play on some enormous stages in front of loads of people, you become rich and famous and buy loads of cars and houses. Amazing. That happens to a very, very small group of people, and I reckon even if you worked really hard writing loads of amazing songs, you'd possibly still have a better chance of winning the lottery than that happening to you. That's my belief anyway. The actual reality is that you put your heart and soul into recording loads of music, you pay for musicians, mixing, mastering, artwork, you release it, usually on streaming platforms, and then, well, for most artists, it actually kind of goes nowhere. No one will then listen to it unless you're really playing the game and the algorithm picks up your music and serves it to people listening to similar things. And I've done quite a lot of research on the way the algorithm's working, on the way streaming has changed over the years, and I've been watching how it's evolved. And the more and more, I'm going to be very honest here, I've kind of felt that my music just does not fit in with that system. What I want from music is to write songs, not in a specific genre or not in the same style as I did last time. I just want to write songs that kind of reflect my experiences or things I'm interested in and things I believe other people will be interested in, and then I would like to release them and share them with other human beings who I would like to meet at some point, and we can talk about it and enjoy the music together and gradually build a community of people who kind of are on the same page and enjoy talking about these ideas and listening to this music together. That's what I would like to do. However, the industry as it works at the moment is kind of encouraging people to pigeonhole themselves and create carbon copies of what they've already done. And then with the advent of AI thrown in there, it's really putting a question mark over the role of human beings making and releasing music, certainly on streaming platforms. So if you're following my music, you'll know that some of it is on streaming platforms, but most of my music is no longer on streaming platforms. My latest album, which is a re-recording of my first album, which I've been touring recently and talking about a lot, that's being released exclusively on CD with a book. It's not going to be on streaming platforms, which is a kind of rebellion against the way the world is moving. But then the other problem I encountered is that you make CDs, well, a lot of people say, well, I don't have a CD player anymore. They can't listen to the music. So where do we stand? Should musicians just make music for the love of it and then release it, and even if they don't get paid, that's fine? Is that what music is now? And if that's the case, I think that is the narrative that should be sold. Not this narrative about, you know, record deals and making loads of money and becoming a superstar. It needs to be much more transparent. I would argue that's not a very healthy way for human beings to live. I think being a musician is a full-time job if you want to be good at it. So I think artists should be fairly compensated for the music that they are making. But how do we do this in a world where technology, where streaming platforms have essentially devalued the artwork? So because you can get music for free, pretty much, on streaming platforms or on YouTube, the art is not worth anything. Why would you pay for it when you can get it for free? And that's kind of what has led me to this point of wanting to do this album. It's kind of an experiment. If we released something in the style that they used to, so just on vinyl record, like they used to do in the 60s, 70s, 80s, in that golden era of the music biz, is it possible in 2026 to release an album like that and for it to be successful? Are there enough people out there just interested in the music itself existing in a physical form and in a way that will support artists fairly to make that work? Maybe it won't work. Maybe I'll end up with a house full of vinyl records that no one wants, but maybe it will work. And if it works, that will be very encouraging to me as an artist, and hopefully inspiring and encouraging to other artists who are thinking along those lines as well. I will tell you the story behind the album in just a moment, but there's one more thought that goes with this, and that is the one blockage in my brain before I wanted to do this was people who kind of quite rightly say, but I don't own a record player. I can't access the music you're going to make. My response to that is going to be, and has to be, I'm really sorry, but I've made so much music that you can have for free, that is on streaming platforms or that is on YouTube that you can find. So it's not like I'm saying all of my music forever from now on is just for people who buy records. What I'm saying is, here is loads and loads of music. Have some for free, enjoy it. This particular project is about releasing it on vinyl as much as it is about the music that's on there. This project is intrinsically tied into the fact it is going to be just released on vinyl, because that's the experiment. And I hope you'll join me on this crazy musical quest. This is the perfect project to do this for. It's kind of just landed itself in my lap, because I love music from the 1970s, Led Zeppelin, Queen, Steel Ice Band, all that era. I absolutely love that era of music. And this album was kind of made in that style. So the album is called Valénor, and it goes way, 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 way back. For people who've been following my music, you'll know I've been talking about Lend an Ear for a while, which is my first solo project. This goes even further back beyond that point. In fact, I can trace the beginning of this album back to when my brother Ben came home from school. I think he must have been 16 at the time, 15, 16. He'd been given some homework, which was to write a poem. I believe in the style of John Keats or someone like that. I'm sure Ben can correct me. And he decided to put it to music. So he played some chords on his electric guitar and said, "Josh, come through here." Gave me the lyrics, shoved a microphone in front of me and said, "Sing." And I said, "What do I sing?" He said, "Make up a tune, sing." He played the track, and I had just one take, and I just improvised a melody over this brilliant poem, which was called Upon the Lake, and it was done in that take. And honestly, that moment was so significant to me. I'm not sure Ben even realises it, but that moment really was the beginning of me falling in love with music and making music, because that song kind of became an anthem, a soundtrack to what I wanted to do. And it was just discovering the magic of recording music. And then I wrote some songs, and they were all very much to do with fantasy universes and elves and goblins and orcs and all that sort of stuff. If you know me, that'll make sense. And we'd record this stuff by putting mattresses and duvets and pillows over the old Mac computer we had to cover up the tiny inbuilt microphone, and recorded drums, electric guitars, bass, vocals by being creative with this one microphone. And we enjoyed like multi-tracking and figuring out how to do it and using basic effects, and the results were actually really incredible. And because we were listening to a lot of 70s music at the time, it kind of ended up like this lost 70s record. But fast forward, I ended up at uni in York, and my very good friend who I've known since I was 4 years old, called Nathan, who also plays guitar in the band, he was at uni in Middlesbrough, and he was doing sound engineering, I believe, sound production, and they had a recording studio. So I thought, oh, amazing, we could record Valénor, this album, in that studio. And when we were at sixth form, me and Nathan had kind of added some more songs to it that we'd written together and recorded in his attic. So this project was really coming together. Ben came over from France, I went across to Middlesbrough, we all met up in the studio over the summer holidays. And even at that point, it felt like we were reaching into the distant past and pulling out these songs from the very beginning of our musical world, really. And we were recording the versions properly. And I was being a little bit, I imagine I was quite difficult to work with, because I was really digging my heels in. I was saying we can't use any samples. I want everything to be real instruments in the room, kind of like they did in the 1970s. And I really dug my heels in, and we did it. I don't know if everyone's pleased with that. I'm very pleased with how it turned out. And it created a really unique album that has got its own sound. It sounds ancient and magical and evocative, and I'm absolutely in love with that album just because it reminds me of those times. I've got so many memories, so many layers and years of memories inside those songs. Only recently have I decided, well, let's get back into sculpting Valénor as best as it possibly can be. And since it is an album that is already recorded in that kind of 1970s way, which is all real musicians in a room together, this is the album to release just on vinyl because it fits so perfectly. So what I'm going to do over the coming months, I'm going to be sharing each of the steps, how this is actually done, so you can see the work that goes into a project like this. And we're going to see if it is possible to release Valénor just on vinyl LP and to see if it can be a success. In an era where streaming has made art worth nothing, when AI can create artworks which are scarily as good as human creations, is it possible to put in the hard work to create a beautiful physical product which is sold directly to music fans and is sustainable? That's the idea. So this year, I'm very optimistic about it, and I look forward to updating you on Chapter 2.